King Lear by William Shakespeare. The tragedy King Lear was written by William Shakespeare in 1605. The story is about the king's family and shows us the relationship between King Lear and his three daughters. It is a moral story about blind love, greed, and wrong deeds. Part 1. Once upon a time, there lived an old king of Britain. His name was Lear. He had three daughters, Goneril, Regan, and Cordelia. One day, King Lear called his daughters and told them, "I am very old and tired. I cannot be the king of Britain anymore. I want to divide the country into 3 parts and give 1 part to each of you. Each of you will be the queen of her part of the country. But first, you must tell me how much you love me. Then I shall know which of you must get the better part." Goneril and Regan were not good daughters. They didn't love their father, but they were very greedy. They wanted to become queens very much. They were glad to hear that their father wanted to divide his country into 3 parts. They only thought how to get the larger and better part of the country. So Goneril said, "Dear father, I love you so much. I love you more than my eyes, more than my beauty, more than my life. There is no child in the world who loves his father more than I love you." The king, delighted to hear from her own mouth his assurance of her love, and thinking truly that her heart went with it, gave to her and her husband 1/3 of his kingdom. Then, calling to him his second daughter, he demanded what she had to say. Regan, who was made of the same hollow metal as her sister, said the same, but in different words. Lear blessed himself in having such loving children as he thought, and gave 1/3 of his kingdom to her and her husband. Then he turned to his youngest and favorite daughter, Cordelia, whom he called his joy. He asked her what she had to say, thinking that she would glad his ears with the same loving speeches which her sisters had. Cordelia knew that her sisters were bad, unfaithful, and dishonest daughters. She loved her father very much, but she didn't want to repeat the false words of her sisters. She knew very well that their hearts were far from their lips. So she said nothing. Only when King Lear told her angrily that she must speak, she said, "I don't understand why my sisters say that they love you more than anything else. They are married. Don't they love their husbands? You are my father, and of course I love you. But when I marry, I shall love my husband too." The King Lear, shocked with this kind of answer, he shouted at her and said that he wouldn't want to have such a proud daughter. He divided the country between Goneril and Regan and gave Cordelia nothing. Part 2. Cordelia went to France and married the French king, who loved her very much. Old King Lear had nothing now. He wanted to rest, so he went to Goneril's castle to stay there. But he didn't stay long there. As we know, Goneril did not really love her father, and soon he understood that. Goneril did not speak with him and was not kind to him. At last she said that she was tired of him. So King Lear decided to leave his eldest daughter's castle and go to his other daughter Regan. He wanted to tell her how bad her sister was and to stay in her castle. But Regan was no better than Goneril. King Lear and his followers had to stand at the gates of the castle and wait for a long time. At last he saw Regan, but she wasn't glad to meet her father. She asked him to return to Goneril's castle. The old king didn't know what to do. He just stayed at the gates of the castle. Soon Goneril came to Regan's castle, and the king saw his two elder daughters again. He tried to speak to them, but they did not let him speak. They laughed at him and called him an old fool. Nearly all his knights and his servants left him. Lear felt very sad, unhappy, and disappointed. He said, "How sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child." He could not stay there anymore, and he left Regan's castle. He was homeless now. One night there was a terrible storm. The rain beat in the old man's face. A strong wind was blowing. It was dark and cold, and Lear had no roof over his poor old head. He was all wet and cold. Sad, disappointed, and discouraged, Lear became mad. A brave knight Kent remained true to the old king and was with him. He was very faithful and honest knight. Kent sent a man to France with a letter for Cordelia. In his letter, he told her everything. When Cordelia read the letter, she quickly gathered an army and went to Britain to fight her sister's armies and make Lear king of Britain again. When Cordelia found her father, the old king was very happy and soon came to himself again. Now he understood who was his best daughter, but it was too late. Goneril and Regan sent a strong and great army to fight Cordelia's soldiers. The French army was beaten. Lear and Cordelia became prisoners. But Goneril and Regan were not happy. They were so wicked that they simply couldn't be happy. They had many enemies and were afraid of many people. They hated each other, and there was a secret struggle between them. Finally, Goneril poisoned Regan. Soon after that, she killed herself with a knife. Cordelia was hanged in prison. When King Lear saw the death of Cordelia, his heart broke and he died too. 3 questions to meditate and discuss. Question number 1. What is the reason of King Lear's physical and spiritual blindness? Question number 2. Why does Shakespeare choose to kill Cordelia? And question number 3. Lear is a foolish old man who deserves everything he gets. Agree or disagree? Please write your comments or opinions.